Hey everyone, this is Alan over at Cobblers Plus in Denver here. Today we're going to be working on a pair of Carminas. Not a very common shoe out here for us in the Denver area, but I've seen and worked on a few of them. But anyways, it's definitely a very nice build. I love these. One of these days, hopefully I can get myself a pair and find time to even wear them on top of that. But we're going to be resoling them with, of course, JR leather sole. It's a premium grade sole, so it would be a shame to put anything but a JR sole on a pair of Carminas. So we'll go ahead and get started. Nothing too crazy. I'm probably not going to show you every single detail about our repairs just because it's going to take too long. I mean, I have a few videos already up that are a little on the long side, I guess you can say, showing more detail, but you know, just kind of the basics at least I'll get out of the way for you. So we've got the top lift off. Now we're going to go ahead and use a little bit of thinning agent in there, because we have to remove the heel base also. And we'll be putting a JR combination heel as well back on afterwards. So those guys are going out of the way. Alright. I'm going to use our heel pry here. It's kind of like a multi-tool for us cobblers, but it's just called a heel pry mainly because it's designed to dig in under a heel base and pry it off. Usually I prefer to always start out by, of course, digging in under it, just at a corner like that there, and then go all around the heel base. Now, one of the great things about these Carminas, for the price point especially, you get a really well-made shoe. This heel block on it, heel base mainly is what we call it. This is stacked leather. It's not fiberboard. It's not, you know, wood or anything like that. It's actual leather, which is definitely what you want in a higher quality shoe of any kind. Is a leather heel base. Lasts longer, a lot easier to replace as well down the road. And you know, just really much nicer looking, especially when you start putting waxes on the edges, where with wood or the fiberboard, it's functional, but once it starts to fall apart, you know, it looks really bad falling apart. These don't exactly fall apart all that easily. I mean, you have to wear into the heel base quite a bit without replacing the heel for some time. And then afterwards, it works out fairly well to replace them. And as you can tell, this heel base really stays on very well because, of course, leather on leather contact, when you adhere everything, really works out well. Oof. Now, I always try to make sure that I go around as much as possible before actually getting under there and prying off the heel base like that, because that's just a greater potential of it getting damaged, you know, and we don't want that to happen. Man, that thing is really on there. You have to use a little bit more of a thinning agent. Now, these Carminas, of course, they are Goodyear welted, but it's a little bit harder to tell, mainly because they have what's called an invisible stitch, also known as a blind stitch. But basically the leather was spliced right here on the edge, folded over, and then stitched underneath, and then the piece of leather that was pulled over is glued back into position. So it seems like it's not stitched, but it actually is. You can tell right there by the wear pattern where the leather is worn down to the stitch already. It really shows that it was stitched using Goodyear Welt method. But that's what we're going to be doing anyways on these today. There, got it off in 2 pieces. Okay, now this is our right foot. I always like to make sure to write which side it is. I have to use a marker. Right foot. Put car for Carmina, just so I know which shoes they go to exactly. And set those aside. At this point we're done with the heel bases. Now we're going to go ahead and clip off these nails that are sticking out over here just a little too much. We don't want to get ourselves hurt. Alright, I'm back here again. I let the thinner in here that I got do its magic on the sole while I took off the other heel base on this one. Now I'm going to go ahead and take my little knife here like that and just start separating the sole from the welt here. Now the knife is definitely needed because of course this is stitched, so at the same time while it's separating it from the welt, it's cutting through the stitches as well. And one of the really nice things I like about the Carmina is you can really see how it's nicely tapered here. That's kind of one of those things that really shows, you know, high quality and elegance also of a shoe, when this waist area right there is narrow, very narrow. You know, it just kind of brings out more of an elegance to a pair of shoes like this. You know, of course, Carmina isn't on the highest end. Of course, there's a few other brands that are a little bit better quality build and everything, but for the money, these guys are freaking amazing. You know, they have everything on point, high quality materials. You know, the only major thing I guess you can say that I really have an issue with is why they wouldn't use a JR sole to begin with like this, but you know, the sole that they have on here is fairly good too. Now once we get to this toe area here, I have to be a little more careful because there's actually little metal tacks in here. You might be able to see them a little bit there, and of course I can't cut through the metal, so I have to be careful because I don't know how far down those tacks are. We've come across some that are just the thickness of the leather sole, some that go a little bit past what the sole is. So, I don't know. Oh, looks like these are about that same thickness there. There we go. Sweet, I was able to cut through it. Let's see. Now these of course don't have a full 360-degree welt like some of you who may be familiar with Allen Edmonds, for example. 360-degree welt means that the sole is stitched all the way around, including the back of the heel. On the Carminas, they don't stitch it on the back of the heel here. They have what's called a wren on it, usually, and I'll show you that in just a minute. So at this point I'm done with my knife, and I'll just use my heel pry again to pry all this up. Okay, pliers. Looks like this one's just a little bit different, the way they designed it. maybe a similar brand amongst different styles of shoes, but each shoe can be designed and built very differently. So pull that up. I did take out the cork along with it. That's a lot of cork they had in there, but we're going to be replacing that cork anyways. We're probably going to have to double, maybe triple layer it even. But they only have the cork right in this area here at the ball of the foot, mainly because they have this other filler for the shank that's a bit wider and thicker. So but looks like it's not a run on this one. The way they designed it actually is so they did a Goodyear welt all the way around this particular model, but they only stitched it up to this point, and when it came down to the heel, they really tapered everything down. They narrowed down that welt right there. So unfortunately we won't be able to stitch at such a narrow welt, because you can see there's literally no edge to be able to get a stitch through there. And that's kind of one of those things that brings out kind of an elegance of a nice higher end dress shoe, is a nice narrow tapered heel like that, that's just narrower, you know, more than something that's a little chunky. It's more elegant, more dressy, and that's one of the key features that Carmina is really into, is having high quality but with elegance as well. But you know, we're still going to do it the same way they are. We're going to have to stitch it up to where the heel base starts, right under it, and that's it. So we've got that out. At this point now I can take out the little heel liner along with the pad. There we go, got it out. There's a little bit of stuff left in there from the socks, happens all the time. But at this point I'm gonna use the back end of my hammer on the last and just hammer slightly. And the goal is to push up these nails here. Remember, we clipped them, but we didn't clip them, of course, all the way. And we need to be able to hammer out those nails. If I can find my tool. So now they're sticking up right there on the inside significantly, that I can get underneath with the tool. And oh, that head snapped off. To be safe, I guess I'm gonna have to grab some pliers for that. There we go. See? Just pull them out like that. And it's one of those things that not all cobbler shops actually do this. Actually, quite a few of them leave them behind. Some shoes were kind of forced with no other choice but to leave them behind too, because they're so stuck in there and, you know, just won't budge. Be right back. Sorry about that. How gentlemen come in actually from a online Facebook group known as Allen Edmond Enthusiasts, and we talked a little while ago and said he was wanting to bring by some shoes, so we got stuck talking for a little while. But anyways, don't even remember where I left off at. There we go. Now these gripper nails inside, of course, they can get a little difficult sometimes to pull out, and so a lot of cobblers don't bother with it. And like I said, I admit, you know, sometimes we're kind of left with no other choice but to leave them behind because they're so stubborn and just start breaking on us, and we just have to give out. But anyways, not really able to see it there, but maybe, yep, you can see the light shining through. See? Just my finger under it. But that takes care of that. So I'll go ahead and do the other one at this point. We're pretty much done now. We're just going to go ahead and finish clearing out the little chunk of cork here and go to our sander, start sanding everything out and sand out this area. Alright, so we're back here again. We got all the stitches out and everything. I double checked the welt to make sure it's all stitched down before putting the cork in. So we double layered it, made sure that everything's filled in nicely and flush. And now at this point we're going to go ahead and glue everything up. and I'll just stick it together. I also cut these out a little bit better now so that they're a little more fitted. That way I could get that logo in the center as much as possible. It's never perfect, but I always try to get it there as close as I can. I'll stick it all together, and it is the end of the day, so at this point, after I stick it all together, I won't be boring you with all that. I'll allow it to cure overnight, and then we'll come back here tomorrow and continue working on this. So I'll see you a bit later then. Alright, so we're back here again. I got everything trimmed out around the edges here, and I sanded out the area for the heel base there. But at this point, because it's an invisible stitch, we got to start cutting the sole a little bit. So I'm just going to spray down some water. This helps soften up the leather at least somewhat for us to be able to cut that invisible stitch. So hang on. Alright, so basically I'm just going to use a razor blade like that there to start splicing the leather down a little bit. And this is one of those more challenging things that takes plenty of practice and a steady, patient hand. So this kind of gives you an idea there. It's kind of what we do. We'll just end up cutting it open, splicing it. And it's a fairly time-consuming thing now. In Europe, actually, they have machines that do this for them. Makes it a lot quicker and easier on their side. But for us cobblers, you know, because we're not mass producing any kind of footwear, we have to do this by hand. Gives us a little bit more control though over it too, about how thick we want it and all that, but it's a fairly time-consuming thing. Just wanted to show you at least a piece of it, and I'm not gonna waste your time going through the whole thing on video, but I'll go ahead and finish them out, and then afterwards I'll show you what it looks like once it's done. So I'll see you back here in just a little bit then. Alright, so I've gone through and did the blind stitch, split everything all around. And I did almost forget to mention that we're also doing the Triumph toe plates on these right there. So I marked it up where it needs to go, and since I already did the blind stitch, I at least started cutting into the material. But it's the same process pretty much, just a little more concentrated on a single spot of cutting everything out carefully. And this is one of those things that takes a little time and effort as well. It's a little hard though usually, just because a larger piece like this I can't see underneath the leather. It's a matter of feel. You kind of feel the leather moving around and all that. So there's a few spots sometimes that may be left behind, like right here. I'm trying to shave off that are a little bit thicker to make sure it's all as even as possible. Now I could technically use a Dremel here, but one, Dremel you actually have a little less control of, because it is a machine that's spinning, and so you start hitting it and all of a sudden the whole thing wants to bounce on you, and it just doesn't work out right. sometimes you end up damaging the bottom, because on here we're not actually putting any form of major finish. We're just going to do a light coat of finish on it. Gentleman requested that, so we're not doing any kind of color or sanding it out. So, you know, it's one of those things where it'll definitely show if I end up nicking it with the sander. Alright, so we're going to position this. Looks like it fits it right there, nice and flush. I think that's my best one yet. Cool. Make sure, yep. Alright, nice, we're all ready. Just fix up this corner just a little more. This is where that pickiness comes in. I'm really picky about stuff. I bet you anything after doing a few other things or finishing out the other shoe, because that one's not finished yet, I'm gonna be catching small things here and there and like, oh wait, there's a touch up, there's a touch up. It's just the way I am. But anyways, gives you an idea there. And then of course the split there for the invisible stitch. Now this one I haven't done anything to it yet, and yeah, at this point now I just gotta do this other shoe and we're ready to get going on the stitching on it. So I'll finish out that one and I'll see you in our stitch room to stitch everything up. Alright, so we've got everything taken care of on the sole. Now we're over here in our stitch room at our what's called our outsole stitcher. It's designed to stitch that welt to the sole right there, all around. We call it the curved needle stitcher. Can't talk well today, but because it has a curved needle like that on here. So let's go ahead and get started then. Oh, I've been spraying this thing down over and over. These JR soles don't take on much water at all. Just kind of shows how good these are, but makes it a little bit harder to work on sometimes. So okay. Alright, so I just stitched everything up. I couldn't record that part. I was having some technical issues there, but I don't know if you can see it there. There's the welt stitching all around everything, and it goes around underneath right there, all the way around. So at this point now, I'm just going to go ahead and start gluing it all up. I'm gonna give this a little more time to dry than usual, just because of course there's water still a little bit left on in the fibers. It's so little it doesn't even feel damp, but there's still a little bit left. So in other words, I'm gonna go ahead and put the glue on right now. Give it about maybe, I don't know, probably, I'm trying to think, 15, yeah, about 15-20 minutes. Sorry, it's been a long day and it's already end of the day here today. I'm here by myself today. But give it about 15 to 20 minutes and then I'm gonna stick the welt together and I'm just gonna let it sit and cure overnight. And then tomorrow I'll be back in and keep working on these. Alright, so I'm not gonna waste your guys' time too much longer with gluing it all of this up. So once it's all cured and everything, tomorrow I'll be sticking on the heel base and running the nails in and keep going. So we'll see you later. Alright, so we're back here again. Now it's time to put on the toe plate to get that out of the way. I still have yet to put on the heel bases as well, but for now we'll just go ahead and stick the toe plates on, because we're not putting any kind of major finish here on the bottom, but we will clean it up and just put one over top. So let's go ahead and get started then. Let's see. Oops, almost dropped that. I had already pre-punched a few holes in here so that I could get the screws to go in. Now, as far as the screws, they're just little brass plated ones like that there. Okay. Beautiful. Now you could probably see that this toe plate is sticking out quite a bit there on the edge. Now these Triumph toe plates, they only come in one size, and so this has to be sanded down a bit. That's what I'm going to be doing anyways here in just a little bit, to sand that out to make sure that's all flush. The Lulu toe plates, which are stainless steel, grab one here. Kind of like this here. Now they come in multiple sizes and they tend to fit more accurately, but the Triumph ones, again, they only come in one size. But either way, it's because they have only 3 screw holes there that tend to fit it just right. So we'll go ahead and get the other one taken care of. I'm going to sand that out and rough the bottom up just a little bit more, and then start getting ready to glue the heel base on and everything afterwards. So at this point, we're pretty much done with the sole area at the moment, and we'll go ahead and move on. So I'll see you back in just a little bit. Alright, so we're back here again with these guys. We've got the heels on there and kind of trimmed out roughly. Now at this point, we're going to go ahead and sand it out on our smoother sandpaper. This is 100 grit. Up here we've got what's called a numb keg pad. It spins around and gives that kind of finishing. And then down here, hidden behind the machine, you can't quite see it, but there's a cone shaped, what's called Brister cone, that helps us sand out the inside of the heel here slightly. There's some dust on there. But anyways, let's go ahead and get started. Before I do, I'm going to go ahead and cut out a little bit of excess of the heel here, so I'll be right back. Alright, got it cut out just at least a little bit of the excess, so let's go ahead and get going. Alright, so we got it sanded out all around the edges a little bit smoother now. Now it's time to go ahead and work on. I also forgot to mention that I need to add a heel liner in here. The only problem is today's the end of the day. Actually, it's after hours already, and I've been so overloaded with other workloads as well that I'm gonna have to do this tomorrow morning. And I'll let you guys see at least some of the process on the heel liner. It's something new for my videos at least, so we'll go ahead and do that. Also, the other thing is we all added in this little what's called a gentleman's notch here, and this is kind of a traditional thing that some of the shoe brands and shoe companies that are a little more high-end, they tend to add to their heel. Alright, so we're back here again. We've got these guys still going. I'm about to do the heel liners on the inside here of them. Go ahead and undo the laces just a little more for me. There we go. Alright, now as you can see, there's a little spot right there that's worn out. There's a hole right there. Now, you know, if you're trying to be cost efficient or anything, you can technically just glue it all up and you're done for, pretty much. But, you know, that's not the right way to do it, technically. But right now we're going to go ahead and unstitch the liner, at least to an extent, because usually a heel liner, it comes up to about right here on each side, but on the inside, of course, and from the very top of the heel to the bottom there. Alright, so we've got that cut out there, as you can see. So now there's that leather heel counter right there. Oh, piece that pulled up a little bit. And there's the chunk that we cut out. You can definitely see that there's a hole there. So we're gonna go ahead and cut out a couple of these out of a sheet of leather that I still have yet to pick out. Actually, I want to pull it out to feel the thickness of the liner a little bit better. I can ballpark it fairly well, but I'd rather get it right. So that's kind of what it is compared right there. So we're gonna make it just a little bit bigger, most likely, to make sure to accommodate that overlap, because we don't want to have any kind of gaps there left over. But yep, that's what we're gonna be doing. And again, I don't use these pieces, they're way too thick and way too hard as well, pre-cuts. So I'll go ahead and get that taken care of. I'll take apart this other shoe as well and do the same thing, so I'm not wasting your time much longer with all my talking. I'll do that all off camera, so we'll see you back in just a little while then. Alright, so I've got the other one out as well, as far as the original liner cut out, and I got these pieces cut out here, softer leather that's designed more for, well, not designed, but it's specifically for liners. It works for other things too sometimes, but it's ideal for heel liners and insoles mainly, just because of the type of finish and grade it is, and thickness, as well as how soft it is. But at this point, you know, all I have to do is really just glue it up. I glued up a few of the spots that were kind of coming up on the heel counter, and I'm gonna go ahead and glue everything up, let it dry, just like that in there. Once it's all glued up and dried, I'm gonna go ahead and stitch it all around the top area. I'll show you guys better. All around the top area. Where was it? Oh, I did forget to mention I did also pull the old stitches here. Now the original liner is usually just stitched at the top there, and so we'll go ahead and stitch it all around there. And just to secure it, there's a little stitch area right here at the back of the heel where the material kind of connects together from the factory. We like to sometimes run a little bit of a stitch through there to help with securing that heel liner a little bit better too, at least at the bottom. And afterwards, once we get in here, we'll tuck in the bottom. You can see I got these little zigzag ridges here. They're of course designed to kind of fit in there, and in case any sections get folded up, and that can happen, it's supposed to not take up as much room, especially because everything is rounded, and if it goes flat like that, the little marks like that, they tend to help significantly without having any kind of folds at the bottom of the heel area there. But I'll go ahead and get that taken care of. Oh, and also I beveled the edges there too. So I'll go ahead and get everything glued up, and we'll see you back in just a little bit. Alright, so we're back here again. We'll let this cure for a good little while now, and it's time to stitch it all up. So we're going to start over here on the edge of where the liner starts, and we have to make sure we lock our stitches, so it means that we go the opposite direction just for a little bit. Make sure I adjust my stitch. This machine is called a Clay's patch machine. It's got a long arm for us to be able to reach into multiple little nooks and crannies. That's how we're able to stitch on patches, like on jackets and vests, with without having to stitch up any like pockets or anything like that. And it's mainly because of this long arm that it has. I grew up using a machine similar to this by Singer, but the Clay's machine, now that's one of those, I guess you could call it more of a prized machines that a lot of cobblers really want and like. Right now it's trying to stick at the moment. As soon as I get past this spot, it should be smooth sailing. There we go. Well, I hope I recorded it all, but camera kind of glitched out on me. So we went all the way around, and now we're at the very end here. We overlapped right where the leather patch ends, so the needle's right down here, and there's the leather patch. And at this point we're going to do what's called locking the stitch, like I mentioned in the beginning, where we go back over top of the original stitch that we just stitched with. This allows the stitches to lock a little bit nicer and not come undone or unraveled. Alright, so I guess kind of see there, needs to be cleaned up just a little bit, some glue there, but I'm gonna go ahead and stitch up the other one, and then we'll go ahead and cut everything off over here. Alright, so I've got the edges all cut and everything. You can see there on the inside the heel liners is definitely looking a lot better now, and also went through and did the edge ink on it. Now we got to varnish everything up. I did go through it off camera. I'm sorry, I ended up getting really busy and had to do it while I was on the phone at the same time, and I did glue that little insole back in there too, so definitely looks a lot better with that heel liner now instead of having the hole there. I already forgot which foot it was on. I think it was on the right foot, but could have been on the left. I already forgot what foot it was. But anyways, we'll go ahead and go to one of our machines and varnish up the edges. That applies a wax coat on it and melts it into the sole very nicely. And keep going. Then I also have to sand up the bottom a little bit nicely so that I can apply a finish over top as well. That's why I didn't really bother. You can see some of the edge ink got on there because it's going to come off anyways, so it's not a big issue. But let's go ahead and move on then. So I'll see you back in just a little bit. Alright, so we're now at one of our shine machines here, and on it is what's called a varnish wheel. These are stacked layers of leather. You can see kind of the lines going through there, but this helps varnish the wax, kind of melt it into the leather very nicely and makes it nice and smooth, using friction, of course. And behind this wheel here, this is what's called our horsehair brush. It's a nice soft brush here. It kind of helps buff everything out, but behind it, you can't quite see it, there's a nylon brush also that kind of helps us even out the wax coating a little bit better, and then afterwards we're going to hit on this horsehair brush to really bring out more of that shine on the edge. So we'll go ahead and get started. It's going to get a little noisy though. Just to give you guys an idea, kind of hard to get it to fit in there so it's visible on camera, but you can definitely see that one's, you know, fairly rough still, and then that one looks a lot shinier. Let's see if I can try to show it off using the soles a little bit better. There we go. Sorry, the lighting isn't all that great here, but definitely looks a lot shinier now. Alright, so I'll go ahead and finish out this other one off camera, and then we'll get ready to start sanding out the bottoms of the soles here. So we'll see you back in just a little bit. Alright, so at this point now we're going to go ahead and sand out the bottom. Now, in most cases, a lot of people are familiar with sanding it out on the numb cake pad on one of our machines. But years ago, I used to actually use a palm sander for sanding out the edges of Western boots sometimes that were plastic, and that gave me a little bit of issue to make it nice and smooth on the machines. And for some reason, I just forgot about it. And one day, one of our main suppliers here locally was having an open house event, and there was a gentleman out there by the name of Jim McFarland. He's actually on the board of directors for SSIA, Shoe Service Institute of America, and he is a very well-known cobbler, very good at what he does, and he's also a judge for the North American competitions in the cobbler industry. And he mentioned it to me, and I'm like, wait a minute, I used to do that as well, just not so much on the bottoms. I did it every now and then on the bottoms just because I had to at certain events and everything, but I'm like, why didn't I do that before? And the main reason why we're using a palm sander today is, of course, because that gold that's in the JR logo, we really try to save that. I mean, it's just aesthetics. It's gonna wear out probably after the first or even the maybe the second wear if you're lucky, but usually after the first wear it starts to wear off. But presentation wise, we still try to keep it, nice looking, as nice as possible. And so we're going to go ahead and use a palm sander with a nice smooth sandpaper piece on it. But it gets really dusty, so I definitely have to put on one of these. So I'll be either talking funny or not talking at all, and it's going to get a little noisy with the palm sander. I'll check later if I'm going to have to just fast forward this section or not. So let's go ahead and get started. Ooh. Hang on just a sec. Whoa. Whew. That was really dusty. Alright, let me blow this off now too. If I can get my compressor. There we go. Alright. So I'm gonna have to go through a few spots a little more by hand, especially like the toe tip area here. There's a few dark spots that I'd like to touch up a little bit. With the palm sander, I mean, you definitely have a bit more control than on the machine, but it's vibrating, so it's gonna hit this toe plate here, and I have to try to be careful not to damage it, basically. I could put the toe plate on afterwards, but again, I'm trying to stitch it beforehand so that the stitches don't get cut during the process of trying to cut out a little notch here for this to sit flush in there like that. So alright, but kind of gives you an idea there. So right now this is bare naked. It actually feels really nice and smooth, and the smell is amazing because this is oak bark tanned, so it has that kind of tree smell to it. It smells awesome. Alright, but I'll go ahead and sand up a few edges here by hand. I'm not going to waste your time too much more with that, and then I'll go ahead and do the other one, and we'll see you back here in just a little bit. Alright, so I've got the soles all taken care of now. It's really dusty in here, so kind of sucks. At least I got my little fan here trying to blow some of this dust away from me. Regardless of what kind of filtration systems we have, when you got dust, it's gonna fly around. But anyways, as far as the bottom, we're actually going to be using Urad. Some of you may be familiar with Urad products. It's kind of one of those instant shine type things. It's an okay product. I don't recommend using it on your leather uppers. It's just I don't recommend it. It dries very streaky. It's not right looking, in other words, and it doesn't really soak in too well into the leather to restore the color all that much. It tends to settle over top, and that's mainly because one of their key ingredients is Carnauba wax in there, and Carnauba wax is a much harder wax. So, you know, as far as leather uppers, it's not the best thing, but for bottom of the sole, works great, especially because everything is stripped down here. That this leather's gonna take it on very well. Even though, you know, the JR soles are well treated, they don't really need to be, you know, treated again or anything like that. But this, we're just putting a finish coat on it, onto that very thin top layer there. You know, it's not really going to do much for protection or anything. It is, of course, mainly aesthetics. So go ahead and do that. And there's a lot of different methods and techniques. You know, this gentleman asked for kind of a neutral color, I guess you can say, and that's what we're doing. Nice light neutral color. We could do a darker one as well if we really wanted to, but we went with the neutral. And we could also do bright colors too. That we use different methods, such as dyeing and then using forms of polishes, and there's a lot of other different techniques and steps. You know, not just this. This one's not bad at all. It's a fairly easy one to do. You know, you can see it already kind of shimmering a little bit, but it still needs to dry some. So I'll go ahead and set that one aside. Now again, it's great stuff, but you know, if you're gonna use it for your shoes, just be advised, it is more of one of those quick shine type of things. So it's a one-step process that does it all, and the ideal method is always to have individual products for each individual task. That way you have the best results. Otherwise, you know, with this, it layers on. You know, I mean, if I put a second coat on, it's going to turn out even darker. But when you're putting it on top of your shoes, it layers upon layers upon layers, and it, after a while, it really looks bad. I mean, I'm not happy with it on the first application. By the second, third, and fourth especially, it just looks horrible, you know. So if you have Urad, it also works very well for your edging here, to touch it up a little bit. Again, because this is a harder leather, so it does tend to absorb things a little bit nicer. But for uppers, stay away from it. So I'll let that dry just for a few minutes, and I'll be back here in just a second to buff everything up now. Alright, so basically now we're all done with the sole. I did buff it up a little bit. Kind of got to clean off that brass toe plating there a little bit. I did buff up the edges a little bit more because, of course, we get some of that cream on the sides here, just a tiny bit. So buffed it over and buffed off some of the dust from when we were sanding everything out. Now at this point, I'm going to go ahead and do a full upper treatment on it. I'm doing the Modality upper treatment on it, so it's a bit of a longer process, especially if I'm trying to record it. So it would end up being like a whole other video on just that. So I'll go ahead and do that off camera, but I'll show you guys afterwards the products I'm going to use step by step, you know, in what order I do it. If you really want to you know, see the whole process, I did a pair of mermans some time ago. I did a full upper restoration that had some serious water and salt damage. It's over an hour long, but it's very detailed in that video about treating the upper for salt and water damage, you know, cleaning it off, and then afterwards, of course, touching up any kind of coloring, conditioning, and cream polish, and all sorts of stuff. So if you really want to see it, I'll link the video down below. Check that out if you really like to. It'll probably end up being as long as this video as well. So just be prepared for basically 2 hours worth of videos if you end up enjoying this video. So we'll see you back in a little bit after I'm done with the uppers and wrap everything up. All right, so we're all done with these now. I ended up having to rush out of here yesterday from the shop. Wife started calling me, so dinner time, you know. Had to spend a little time with the family, but finished them out this morning. I ended up running the nails into the heels here. Forgot to do that last night, but got that taken care of. Buffed up the bottom just a little bit more, cleaned off all the excess there, and then also buffed up the uppers. So as far as the upper treatment on it, I did have to use the Reno mat, and I had to use quite a bit of it. There was a lot of wax and polish on these. I mean, a lot. So I mean, I really had to work at it. But after using the Reno mat to clean everything off, moved on, of course, to the renovator to restore back the nutrients that the leather really needs, especially because of the thick wax coated polish, wax coat and polish, sorry, can't talk. Not a lot of nutrients can be absorbed into the leather itself, so the renovator cream was a must. From Saphir Medaille, it's mainly mink oil based and has lanolin and beeswax in it, and the absolute main base, of course, is water in here, so there's no solvents in it. This is kind of if you were to pick only one product, the renovator is the one that you want to go for. But next step, of course, I use the pomadier cream from the Saphir Medaille and kind of help bring up some of the color again, and as well as give us our base wax coat. And then with my fingers, I ended up going through and applying the Pate Deluxe from the Saphir Medaille. I went through the uppers, twice over the toes, and of course the edging a little bit too. And then as an extra one, because of course we have buffers here, I had a soft horsehair brush on one of my buffers. I added a little bit of the mirror gloss from Saphir Medaille on it, just a little bit, you know, to help get it with some harder waxes to help with the shine. But adding a little bit of Carnauba wax to it, just a small thin coat, really helps bring everything up and makes it a little bit easier down the road to also bring that shine back. So say, you know, they start to like look a little bit raggedy, you could take a horsehair brush and just run it over, buff it up. You know, either way, I highly recommend a horsehair brush before you leave the house. Buff up your shoes, and it helps the waxes kind of, you know, even out a little bit when you use that friction from going back and forth to brush it. And then at the end of the day as well, you know, to get any dust or dirt off of it, be a good idea to just kind of buff it over as well before they go back onto the shelf. And of course, shoe trees, always very important. The gentleman, good thing he has his own shoe trees, you know, that just shows that he cares for his shoes. But anyways, that's how we do a full JR resole with the, of course, blind stitch where you can't see the stitch, the Triumph French toe plate, JR combination heel, and then we did an upper treatment as well as the inner heel liner there on these. So it was a bit of work on them, especially because I'm a little overloaded, but hey, that's what it's like when you're a cobbler. We always get either really slow or really overloaded, and lately I've been really overloaded. But anyways, I hope you enjoyed the video. I'm hoping it's not crazy long, but if you are wanting to see the whole step-by-step process of how we do the whole upper treatment and everything, and actually using the creams and polishes, check out our video. It's the other video that we have. It's the mermans that we restored on them. It's also about an hour long, but it'll be in more detail about how we do things. If you like this video, please subscribe, hit that notification bell down below. You know, we're going to be trying to make more and more videos as time goes by. I'm still new at this. I'm not a professional videographer. I'm a cobbler, so you know, I do the best I can. But you know, if you have any other questions or comments, please leave them down below. If you have something a little more detailed, you can always email or message us. As well as give us a call. If you're local here in the Denver area, you can stop by. If you're not local, and you'd like us to work on your shoes or boots or any other leather goods, you can always mail it in to us. Just go to our website, CobblersPlus.com, and under the ship and orders section, yeah, it was under the section, but under that section, go ahead and follow the instructions, print out the PDF file and fill out the form, and just mail them in. We'll be happy to service whatever items you have. But yeah, we'll just see you next time then.